Hello and welcome to another episode of Essential DOS Games. In the late 80s and early to mid 90s, platform games were all the rage on home consoles, but home computers got their fair share of great platformers too. PC gamers were no exception, with some great little platform games coming to DOS during that era. Many were ported from the Amiga, and I'll not be mentioning too many of those here, so you will note the absence of some classics like Flashback and Rick Dangerous, but here are 12 DOS platform games worth checking out. Commander Keen is a series of games developed by id Software and published by Apogee between 1990 and 91. It has 6 main episodes, none of which I'll be focusing on specifically here, but 4 to 6 are arguably the best. The first episode, Invasion of the Vorticons, was id's first game. It came about when John Carmack developed a technique called adaptive tile refresh, which allowed the PCs of the time to display side-scrolling levels without having to redraw the screen with each frame, thus saving on resources. This allowed PCs to produce side-scrolling platformers similar to Nintendo's NES, and the team even developed a PC port of Super Mario 3 as a test, although Nintendo weren't interested in releasing it. So, id went on to develop Commander Keen using the same technology. The 6 main episodes are split into 3 games, Invasion of the Vorticons containing the first 3, episodes 4 and 5 in Goodbye Galaxy, and the 6th released on its own as Aliens 8 My Babysitter. The story follows 8-year-old Billy Blaze, a child genius with a wonderful imagination. When he builds his own spaceship and dons his brother's American football helmet, he becomes his alter ego, Commander Keen. He sets off around the galaxy, exploring wondrous landscapes and taking on various alien races hell-bent on destroying the Earth, or even the universe. Commander Keen is armed with a ray gun and has a pogo stick on which he can bounce and helps him jump higher than he could otherwise. Each episode has a unique set of enemies, usually aliens or robots of some sort. The levels are nicely varied, especially in episodes 4 to 6, spanning all manner of colourful alien worlds and technologically advanced structures. In between each level you navigate a top-down map that resembles the old 2D RPGs like Zelda. The music's a bit of a mixed bag across the episodes, but I'd say that episodes 4 and 5 have the best. Commander Keen was a huge deal at the time, considering that the PCs of the era just couldn't do this kind of game efficiently until Carmack's adaptive tile refresh came along, so it's a fitting place to start when looking at DOS platformers. Prince of Persia is one I played a lot back in the day on my mate's 386. An absolute classic, and a game that was seriously impressive when it was first released. It first came out in 1989 on the Apple II, developed by Jordan Mechner and published by Broderbund, but soon made its way to PC. Certainly not your everyday platform game. One of the reasons it was so impressive was the fluidity of the character's motion. This gorgeous animation was achieved using rotoscoping, a technique which involves tracing over motion captured footage, and Mechner actually used footage of his brother performing the actions in addition to tracing films like The Adventures of Robin Hood. Set in Persia, obviously, you play as this guy who's racing against time to save a princess from an evil Jafar. You navigate the maze-like corridors of his palace looking for her, and you only have 60 real-time minutes in which to find her. If you succeed, you become known as the Prince of Persia. You'll need to run, leap and fight your way through, plus take on the Jafar's guards by engaging in sword fights. There are numerous traps to avoid too, like deep pits, spikes and guillotines, some of which are triggered by hidden switches in the floor panels. Health isn't exactly plentiful, so you can't take much punishment before dying, and having a bad fall or getting stuck by a trap will result in instant death. You can die as many times as you like, but it will keep setting you back, making the likelihood of you rescuing the princess within an hour increasingly slim. Prince of Persia is a brilliantly fun and challenging game, and it really has that one more try factor. BioMenace is another Apogee game, but this time they developed it too. It was released for DOS in '93 after they spent a couple of years tweaking id's Commander Keen engine. You play as CIA agent Snake Logan, tasked with ridding the city of invading mutants. There's not much to say about the gameplay. You make your way through the levels killing monsters with power-ups and keycards to collect. I'm not going to dwell on this game for long as it's nothing special in the graphics and audio department, especially considering this was 1993, but BioMenace is one that a lot of DOS platformer fans like. It's free online now, so it won't cost you anything to check out. Moving on from a platformer that's quite unremarkable to one of the best that DOS has to offer, Jazz Jackrabbit. Another game that I played a lot in the 90s, Jazz Jackrabbit was the PC's answer to the great platform games on home consoles. Developed by Epic Mega Games and released in '94, this was created by Cliff Bleszinski of Gears of War fame and Arjan Bruce, who went on to co-found Guerrilla Games and directed the Killzone series. The story follows Jazz striving to save his kidnapped girlfriend from some bad guy, that old chestnut. Although they set out to replicate some of Sonic's aspects, in particular its speed, Jazz Jackrabbit is more of a platform shooter. They certainly succeeded with recreating the sense of speed. The game runs very fast when compared to other DOS platformers, and Jazz's speed increases the longer you run. As I just mentioned, Jazz is armed. He starts out with a basic blaster, but can obtain upgraded weapons which alter the shot power and direction, and include weapons like a grenade launcher, dynamite and a flamethrower. There are also power-ups like a shield for added protection and a hoverboard that allows him to fly through the air. There are bonus stages too that take place from a third-person viewpoint, almost like the special stages in Sonic CD. Jazz Jackrabbit absolutely nails it on all fronts. Excellent graphics and sprites, smooth gameplay with significant pace, and an outstanding soundtrack. Definitely one that anyone looking to venture into DOS gaming should play. (1994's Blackthorne is one that I didn't discover until well after the 90s had ended. Developed by Blizzard and published by Interplay, this has a lot of similarities with Prince of Persia because it also uses rotoscoping for the character animations, but also reminds me of Delphine's Flashback with its cinematic presentation and atmosphere. The intro sets the scene in a rather confusing manner. The gist is that the player character Kyle is transported by his father, the king, from his home planet to Earth. Here he hides in order to protect some sort of magical stone from falling into the hands of an evil dude called Sarlacc, who rules a bunch of monsters. Fast forward 20 years and Kyle is transported back to his home planet, and so the game begins. Kyle must traverse the dark platform-laden levels on a quest to kill Sarlacc and regain his throne. The 17 levels are contained within 4 distinct areas with differing environments. As Kyle progresses, he can upgrade his weapons and collect keys and items. His power and available weapons increase with each level, but enemies will level up in parallel. The levels are very maze-like, requiring some lateral thinking. Some areas can only be accessed by obtaining a specific key or having a certain item. You run, jump and climb your way around the maze of platform-filled screens, again very reminiscent of Prince of Persia. You can rescue your imprisoned brethren along the way, some of whom will award you with useful items. The aspect that sets this apart from Prince of Persia is the combat, which is far more frequent and gun-based. So, if you like blasting monsters to bits with a shotgun or blowing apart doors with grenades, then Blackthorne is right up your street. The graphics are nicely done and the music is atmospheric and a perfect match for the aesthetic. Blackthorne has been free online since 2013, so trying this one out is a no-brainer. As I said earlier, as with many great DOS games, they started out on the mighty Amiga but ended up receiving a jolly good DOS port. Zool is one such example, having originated on the Amiga in late '92. A DOS port was released in 1993. Developed by Gremlin, Zool rather appropriately stars a gremlin called Zool, a ninja of the nth dimension. This is another fast-paced platformer that wanted to bring the speed of games like Sonic to home computers. Zool is incredibly nimble and can run at speed, climb, perform a spin attack, jump a fair distance, and can leap his way up and even cling to walls. All this running and leaping is aided by silky smooth scrolling, which makes the platforming gameplay nice and slick. In one of the most blatant acts of product placement gaming has ever seen, Zool was famously sponsored by Chupa Chups, so you'll see references to their lollipops and their logo throughout the game. Zool has, as I mentioned, a spin attack to take out enemies and a standard shot too. Power-ups are of course available to collect as well. The platforming action is split up by periodic changes of pace, for example these side-scrolling shooter sections. They aren't anything to write home about, but are a welcome distraction. The soundtrack is decent too. It was composed by Patrick Phelan, who had worked on several games including the Lotus, Top Gear and Micro Machines series. It's electronic techno, emulating the music popular during the early 90s rise of the rave scene, with electronic bands like The Prodigy rising in popularity. I wouldn't exactly say that Zool broke the mould, but it was certainly a welcome experience for DOS gamers wanting a pacey platform game. Before he was amusing DOS gamers with his foul-mouthed antics in 1996's Duke Nukem 3D, the Duke Nukem games were 2D platformers. Duke Nukem II is arguably the best. Full name Duke Nukem II Escape from Alien Abductors, this was developed by Apogee and it was released in late '93 as 4 parts, each containing 8 levels. Duke has been kidnapped by aliens, as the game's subtitle suggests, but he breaks free and has to shoot his way out. The aim is to basically blast all the aliens to smithereens and occasionally destroy a radar dish before finding the level's exit. Sometimes keycards will need to be collected to pass force fields blocking his path. Duke's primary weapon is a pretty effective gun, but he can also pick up heavier firepower, including a flamethrower and rocket launcher, and there are also power-ups on offer too. Not only is this an interesting glimpse into Duke Nukem's pre-3D past, but it's a cool little platform game that's worth a shot. Jill of the Jungle is perhaps one of the most bare-bones games on the list when it comes to graphics, but that just goes to show that the magic of the DOS era was in the gameplay and not in the visuals. This was initially released by Epic Mega Games in 1992 as 3 separate episodes, but was eventually put out as one consolidated game called Jill of the Jungle: The Complete Trilogy. You take on the role of Jill, an Amazonian exploring various levels, killing monsters and finding keys with which to progress. The story, if you can call it that, can be accessed via the menu, but it pretty much just says, "You're Jill, you're hot, okay bye," so not even a whiff of plot here. 2 of the 3 episodes see Jill accessing levels via an overworld map, with one straying from this format, instead having the traditional platform game sequence of levels. There's really not much to this. You leap about platforms and climb up vines, killing enemies with one of 2 collectible weapons, a spinning blade and a dagger that bizarrely returns to you like a boomerang. This is quite cool, as you can manipulate its flight path by altering Jill's position while it's on its way back to you. There are some hazards in the form of various traps too, which you'll need to avoid, and the occasional basic puzzle is thrown in the mix. As I said, nothing that's going to blow your mind visually, but it's a reasonably well loved and fun platformer with some atmospheric and apt music that was good for the era. Jill of the Jungle: The Complete Trilogy is currently free on GOG.com if you want to give it a bash. Although the first game came to various home computers, Prehistorik 2 only made it to DOS and the Amstrad CPC. This was developed and published by Titus Interactive and released in 1993. In contrast to the last game on the list, this has some very nice graphics. Although a DOS platformer, visually it can be quite at home on the Super Nintendo with some nice chunky sprites. You play as a caveman on a quest to find food, traversing various outdoor terrains and ancient ruins, killing various prehistoric beasts, animals and rival cavemen, and avoiding traps. Attacking blows are dealt with the caveman's massive club, which resembles a mallet, and the occasional throwing axe can be found. The music is decent, albeit unremarkable, and other than that there's nothing much else to note here. It plays like a cross between a traditional console platform game and Rick Dangerous, but it's fun. He didn't do the mash, he did the Monster Bash. Yes, Monster Bash was another Apogee platformer released on DOS in 1993. As with a lot of games on this list, it was released as 3 episodes, the first of which being shareware. Monster Bash stars a kid called Johnny whose dog has been taken by a sinister count. Johnny, armed with his trusty catapult and sporting a baseball cap and a onesie, heads out into the underworld to rescue him. Heavily influenced by old horror films, the whole vibe is graveyard, zombies and death. The enemies are all recognisable from these classic films too, like zombies, severed hands, skeletons, witches and werewolves. Johnny has to save other trapped dogs and cats along the way too, found in cages throughout the levels, and he has to free all of them to complete the level. His weapon, the catapult, has an endless supply of rocks to use against enemies, but he can obtain more powerful projectiles to use like larger rocks or fireballs. The catapult can also be used to move objects that may be blocking his path. The music is befitting of the monster theme but isn't amazing, but there are some quite cool sound effects and voice samples. Monster Bash came to GOG.com a few years back, although it isn't free. Alien Carnage was originally released as Halloween Harry, but the name was changed amid fears that the title was too holiday specific. This was developed by Interactive Binary Illusions and Sub-Zero Software, originally published by Apogee as Halloween Harry in 1993 and again as Alien Carnage in 1994. You play as Halloween Harry, the original title's namesake. His mission is to save the world from aliens, hell-bent on taking over the world and turning its population into zombies. Enemies are varied, being a mix of aliens and zombified humans. Harry has a jetpack at his disposal and a flamethrower as his primary weapon. An interesting mechanic here is that the jetpack and flamethrower use the same fuel, so use your jetpack too often and you'll run out of fuel for your weapon, leaving you vulnerable. Other ammo types like missiles can be purchased from vending machines found dotted around the levels, which can be bought by exchanging coins collected from downed enemies. There are also hostages to rescue, and doing so will replenish your health, although health and other power-ups can be collected too. To complete a level, Harry needs to rescue all the hostages and then find the lift to the next level. To find all the hostages, you'll need to flip switches and find hidden passages. There's a heads up display showing your remaining ammo, aka jetpack fuel, time remaining, cash and score, as well as a largely useless radar. Visually, this game is exceptional, with beautifully drawn graphics and sprites, smooth motion and a parallax background that gives the levels a nice sense of depth. Great music too, especially the title track. Alien Carnage was released as 4 episodes, the first again being shareware, but has since been released for free online by 3D Realms. This one's a belter, so I thoroughly recommend trying it. Cyril Cyberpunk was developed and published by Reality Studios in 1996. This actually started as Cyberboard Kid that was being developed by Apogee, but that was scrapped and Reality Studios finished the game, renaming it Cyril Cyberpunk. It stars a kid called Cyril who rides a pink hoverboard a la Marty McFly and blasts aliens with his ray gun. Yes, this involves yet another alien invasion. It's New York 2224 and Cyril intercepts an alien transmission, indicating that an attack is imminent. He takes it upon himself to thwart this plan. Enemies are various types of aliens and killer robot teddy bears randomly. There are 32 maze-like levels in all, and you collect key cards to progress. The graphics are again very nice indeed, but to be fair, this is the latest release on the list. The music is just fantastic, with thumping bass and 90s electronic beats galore. There's a lot to like here. The gameplay is slick, it's well presented, and there's even a level editor included should you wish to design your own. So that was 12 of the must-play DOS platform games out there. Let me know if you've played any of these or what your favourite DOS platformers are. And as always, thanks for watching. You can find the other episodes in my Essential DOS Game series in this playlist.